Hi, everyone. I am here with Chocolate and with Fluffy, and I wanted to tell those of you who were with all of us at Contact this past weekend, this glorious conference that I'm going to talk a little bit about, that when I got home at about 1 o'clock this morning today, and I came through the front door, these two little guys just came running, bounding. And I was so happy to see them that I laid down on the floor. And they both came and licked my hands, licked my forehead, and it was the most beautiful, wonderful moment. Like, they're just little humans in fur, and they were happy to see me and meet with them. And I just wanted you to know that these little guys are adorable, wonderful, and that last night they gave me a homecoming that it meant everything. And now I'm going to let them down because they're still dear rambunctious life. And I wanted to talk with you who weren't in Indian Wells that it really was, I think, one of the most fun conferences that I've ever been. They said there were about 3,000 people through the days of the weekend, and it felt like every single person we ended up with hugs. It was the most positive energy, and that there were 3 young girls who came running to me, like I think they were probably like juniors in high school. And they said, Linda, we want you to know we're going to run for Congress and get this truth out. And this is the first time in my life on earth this time around that I ever saw such enthusiasm and energy in the eyes of people who were teenagers saying they would run for Congress to get the truth out, that we're not alone in the universe, and to learn about other life forms. And I think that it set the tone for everything that I felt about Contact in the Desert, and that I'm expecting we're going to begin to feel more and more of this. And that is that the energy and interest and curiosity and questions and sophistication of the people at conferences now far outstrips efforts by the United States and other governments to keep facts and truth away from humanity. It's happening on its own. And those are the node points in history when there's real changes. And I call it the crossfade. This has been the world of policy denials and lies and total concoction going all the way back to the Sumerians and the Anunnaki. And here, right now, is what has been suppressed all of the decades and centuries. And now it's as if this is beginning right now, just at this point, it's beginning to come up in a crossfade. And pretty soon, this is what's going to dominate, and all the lies and the concoctions are going to fade away as this gets louder and louder. It is truly an exciting time. And the hotel, it was the Renaissance Indian Wells. It is called a resort and spa, and it was glorious. And one of the nights, a group of us, about half a dozen of us, joined a man who does wholesale on military infrared equipment. When the government is going to throw it away, he gets it. And we had some really high-end, wonderful infrared binoculars. And so we left the lights of the hotel and we went out on it's still the grounds of this beautiful Indian Wells Renaissance Hotel, but quite a ways away, where it was almost completely dark at a certain point. And we're walking on grass, no more sidewalks, no more cement. It was like we had gone from the civilized industrial world into like a safari. And we got to a pond, and on that pond there were a whole bunch of bullfrogs. And as we raised these infrared glasses to the night sky and we were seeing all of these things moving. Probably a lot were birds, maybe satellites. We saw a couple of things that looked structured that we didn't know what they were, but it was like traffic going all the time in the sky in the infrared. And then came, whoop, 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 were these bullfrogs, only I can't go as low as they were, but they had that sound. And one would make a sound, then another over here, and it was like a chorus playing an orchestra. And as we were in the dark, with no lights around us, listening to those primal bullfrog sounds, with light glistening on the water, nothing below our feet except grass, with the ability to take the glasses down and be in darkness and then raise them to the night sky and just see constant things moving. It was as if the sky were like a freeway. There is so much stuff up there now. And probably, as I said, probably a lot of the low-flying stuff had to be birds. But there were things that were puzzling up above. And we know now that there are over 3,000 satellites going around the Earth. And so anybody who's interested, you can be so entertained now by the night sky by just getting some infrared and looking up and just seeing it alive, and let your mind roam about what all is up there, what all is out in the Milky Way galaxy, what all is out in this booming, buzzing, strange universe that we're in, and that we are at a time when a new world is coming, if we can take it, as Lieutenant Colonel Philip J. Corso said to several of us back in 1997, that he had gotten a download from some kind of alien intelligence at White Sands, and that he, Lieutenant Colonel Philip J. Corso, said to me and to Whitley Strieber and others that the telepathic thought was, there's a new world coming if you can take it. Now, part of the festivities and the energy and the cheer was that on Saturday night at a dinner for the speakers, I was awarded, it was a complete surprise, this beautiful Lifetime Achievement Award, and it says, thank you for helping us find the truth. I can't think of any other words I would like to be associated with than reporting facts and truth. And this beautiful, hard to see because when things are made up there, that's good. I think you can see there. And it was wonderful. And this was presented to me by George Norrie, the host of Coast to Coast AM, with a kiss on my cheek. And this was a real highlight. And it is from Contact in the Desert. Lifetime Achievement Award 2018, Linda Moulton Howe. Thank you for helping us find the truth. I'm truly, truly grateful. This is wonderful. Now, the next thing I would like to bring you up to speed on is tomorrow on Phenomena Radio Live that I co-host with John Burroughs, the retired tech sergeant from all of the RAF Bentwaters mystery in 1980. And we were going to have Nick Pope, and Nick has had a conflict, but said he promises in a month or so that he's going to have more news from the UK, and he will definitely do a Phenomena Radio. And stepping in is the wonderful Peter Levenda, brilliant, and I cannot wait for the 2 hours live to talk about him with a whole series of things, including the buzz that is now coming from behind the scenes at To the Stars, where Peter Levenda has been the collaborator with Tom DeLonge on the books, the Secret Machine books, and Peter is the one who did part one, the nonfiction, having to do with gods and man, and essentially alien intelligence. And Peter is going to be with us live for the full 2 hours. and we're going to be talking about this buzz on briefings for members of Congress by some of the consultants to the stars, as well as probably Peter Levenda knows as much as anybody that is a researcher or investigator about what are the true format natures of real documents that have been stamped and classified within NSA, CIA, DIA, and all of that world. He knows it inside out and upside down. And I asked him some questions about the recent executive summary that was released and became controversial, and other documents. He did a great presentation at Contact in the Desert about confidential and classified documents and the whole process of trying to get access and why, in some cases, for example, the executive briefing that was released to George Knapp 3 weekends ago or so, and it was criticized for not having the letters, numbers that should be stamped at the top and the bottom of the page. Peter pointed out to me today that even the letters and the numbers could be classified, and that's why they couldn't release the classic, real, original document or documents from which a summary would be drawn. So we're going to hear all about that tomorrow. Tune in to Phenomenon Radio Live. We go 5, 6, 7, 8 across the country, Pacific to East Coast, for 2 hours live. So if you're in New York City, we're on live 8 to 10. If you're in the Central Time Zone, we are on 7 to 9. If you're in the Mountain Time Zone, where I am in Albuquerque, it's 6 to 8 live. And if you're on the Pacific Coast, it's 5 to 7 live. So hope to hear that a lot of you make tomorrow night's Phenomenon Radio. Now, I was really almost amazed that today the New York Times is reporting that on Wednesday, June 6th, without any other announcement, they became aware that the State Department's medical team and their acting Director General of the Foreign Service, William E. Todd, and the Assistant Secretary of State for Diplomatic Security, that's in the State Department, flew to Guangzhou, China, to assess the same situation that I reported 3 or 4 weeks ago, on my last coast in what would have been April, the end of April, about the Cuban embassy syndrome of 10 Canadians, 14 Americans, a total of 24 there, reporting headaches, dizziness, inability to stand or move correctly, with headaches and feelings of pressure and all of that I reported about at Earth Files and on Coast in April. It is now the 1st of June, and I want to update you because until today, I have been gone for a week on the conferences and doing work with ancient aliens, but this is amazing because the same syndrome is now being reported and has been since May, maybe as far back as April, one case. And it is the same Cuban embassy syndrome, but now it's at the USA consulates in China. We have an embassy in Beijing. We have a consulate in Guangzhou, Hong Kong, Chengdu, Shanghai, Shenyang, and Wuhan. Now, the consulate that are reporting the same kind of physical disabilities and hearing strange sounds is our consulate in Guangzhou. That's where the State Department team went. Now, let me update you, since I just was learning this afternoon, and I wanted you, my wonderful Earth Files YouTube audience, to hear this as well, because you might not be aware either. A crisis over a mysterious ailment sickening American diplomats and their families, which began in Cuba in 2017 and recently appeared in China, has widened on Wednesday June 6th, that's today. The State Department evacuated at least 2 more Americans who fell ill in China after hearing strange noises. Many other employees at the American consulate in the southern Chinese city of Guangzhou and their family members are also being tested by a State Department medical team that has been flown in only today. It is unclear how many of them are exhibiting symptoms, but officials expect more American personnel to be evacuated, just like they were from Cuba. For months, American officials have been worried that their diplomats have been subjected to target attacks involving odd sounds leading to symptoms similar to those following concussion or minor traumatic brain injury. Now that's the New York Times today. Here is Earth Files, and my date was April 27th, 2018. This is the series that I did for Coast to Coast AM and for Earth Files. And here is the quote that I highlighted from my interviewee in April, Douglas H. Smith, MD. He is director of the Center for Brain Injury and Repair at the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia. And this was his featured quote. "We all believe this is a real syndrome in Cuba. This is concussion without blunt head trauma," close quote. For those of you who heard that interview, Dr. Smith was explaining how strange it was for them to be doing all of these studies on all of these people who had been in Cuba, and they were finding the same symptoms as they would if there had been a brain concussion with a football player who got hit really hard on the field. And yet, they can't find any evidence of physical trauma, but the symptoms are identical to hard, blunt force trauma like with football players. This is really, truly a mystery. And this particular new information says that the Americans are now exhibiting the very similar symptoms from Cuba, but now in Guangzhou, China. And what they say that the State Department is now raising the question, if it's gone from Cuba for over a year and is now happening in China, could that be pointing that infrasound or ultrasound or microwaves or all three are being used in some new weapons that China and or Russia could be using on Americans for reasons that are not understood? And it all started in the spring around April. Our first employee had these symptoms and was evacuated. Then came May last month. There were more who needed medical attention because they were so disoriented or hurt. And then the first week of June, a man, wife, and his 2 children have been evacuated because the parents began being so seriously affected by something that was causing them disorientation that they decided that they must leave also with their children. Now, there are roughly 170 American diplomats or employees in Guangzhou, China, as well as their family members, and a senior American official told the New York Times that a sizable number had undergone or would undergo undergo testing by these State Department doctors who have been sent and they've been sent apparently not only today, more were added to some that left on May 31st. So this has been going on, accelerating into medical doctors getting into Guangzhou to do more examination while they're evacuating from this roughly 170 American diplomats there. The latest American employee evacuated was Mark Lindsay, a security engineer officer at the consulate. He left Wednesday evening, meaning today, well, our today would have been several hours ago in China. He left Wednesday evening with his wife and 2 children after having suffered in recent months from what he described in an interview as neurological symptoms. And then it says that Mr. Pompeo from the United States, our new Secretary of State, who was the head of the CIA, now is the Secretary of State, said in a statement that the symptoms in that first case discovered in Guangzhou were similar to the ones experienced by the 24 Americans who became ill in Havana. And he said, sort of clarifying what I had reported at the end of April, that there still is no explanation. And Pompeo said, the cause has yet to be established. Then it goes on to say that on May 23rd, and that would be a week and a half ago or so, the State Department disclosed that an employee stationed in China had complained of abnormal sensations of sound and pressure in their mind over several months from late 2017 until April 2018. And that's why they finally decided that employee had to be evacuated, and he has never been identified. And then it goes on to say that in an email sent to the entire staff of the consulate, Mr. Lindsay, the one who has been named, complained that no one was told of the health concerns of people being secretly evacuated from the consulate in China, or the United States consulate, until just recently. And this was after doctors in the United States had found the evidence of brain trauma, and that would be the University of Pennsylvania. That's what I reported about in April. So this is right current, that everything is happening as we are moving forward in time. Said the Chinese consulate that the United States has been in, and where all of this has started in the last few months, is a, quote, state-of-the-art building designed to withstand electronic eavesdropping and other security and intelligence threats. So this was a new building designed to try to prevent anything from happening, and yet look what we're evacuating, just like we had to in Cuba. And it said that it has been 2 different buildings. Mr. Lindsay was in a high-rise building in what's called the Canton Place, a modern complex built around a plaza. Another diplomat who reported symptoms and has been evacuated was at a different building. So that means that if it's line of sight, infrasound, ultrasound, or microwaves causing this, or something we don't understand, line of sight would mean that now we've got established 2 buildings, the consulate, where this is occurring. And that would suggest that some kind of technology is being moved and aimed. That's speculation, but how else could you end up with people being this affected in different buildings if it isn't technology that is moving? Now, one more thing here. Mr. Pompeo from the United States said that he has created a healthcare task force to examine, quote, the unexplained health incidents that have affected a number of U.S. government personnel and family members stationed overseas, and that his statement, Mr. Pompeo, now Secretary of State, left open the possibility that there have been similar events at other American embassies or consulates besides Guangzhou. So this seems to be something that is spreading, not only from one side of the world to another, but is spreading in China among our consulates. Let me just double check in my notes. The only other thing to say is that Mr. Lindsay, who is now being evacuated, he said that he believes that his work made him a target, and that is before joining the Foreign Service in 2011, that he went on to work for the Diplomatic Security Department in the Secretary of State that would be assigned to consulates and embassies. So that means that they are concentrating their efforts at trying to understand why would there be some kind of frequency being aimed where we have diplomatic security departments, and that is the implication there. I'm going to stay on top of this as much as I can. I had an invitation from Dr. Smith to call him and do another interview. He is one of the best in the world when it comes to neurologic issues and questions, and he is a neurosurgeon. So at the University of Pennsylvania, I will try to get an interview sometime soon to follow up on what he might know on what's happening in China and report back to you at a Wednesday gathering here at Earth Files YouTube channel upcoming. And I guess I've sort of given you my update from being gone a week and coming back, and all these wonderful things that have happened, and the excitement of being in a conference where it just felt like everybody there was so sharp and paying so much attention and asking such great questions. And it reminded me of you all, my Earth Files YouTube channel. And I wonder, Lori, if we might have some questions tonight from tonight's audience.
Absolutely. First, I'd like to give a great shout out to our super chats. ATL, Respiridu, and Sarah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Here's our first question from Kodiak. Linda, do you believe that what Christians believe about how most of these aliens are in fact the fallen angels? If so, then do you think we should listen to what the Bible tells us about how to deal with them?
I'll tell you why I pause. I'll tell you why it's difficult. And it is because I have always felt that we were dealing with things that were possibly on a range of positive and negative. But that I thought the demon angel category was something from ancient lenses, and that it wouldn't apply to the 21st going into the 22nd century. But I have suggested a little bit here and opened it up a tiny bit at the conference in Contact. And it is that I had a discussion with a physicist about a year ago. And I'm not prepared to unravel the whole thing yet. I'm actually working on it and want to do something really serious at Earth Files and Coast and perhaps Phenomenon, and do a series of Earth Files reports. But for the first time, I've had my eyes opened by a real physicist who has worked in physical evidence related to UFOs and ET, who told me that everything that he worked on was in the context that we're in the matter universe, and that surrounding the matter universe are series of frequencies, different dimensions, and that the dimension closest to our matter universe, that has been called through the millennia the astral plane, is in fact part of what he would call a physical machinery of the way the large cosmos has been built. And that he would say, not in terms of mythology, not in terms of religion, not in terms of philosophy, in terms of physics, that our matter universe has been surrounded by dimensions in which the closest one is filled with negative energies almost as if designed to taunt and tempt souls in the matter world of our universe, because they have no soul. And that the soul is not mythological. The soul is not something that is ephemeral without real substance. That the soul is the major, I guess I want to say, the major ingredient in the machinery of not only our universe, but the entire cosmos with a capital C, that would include the matter universe surrounded by a whole bunch of dimensions, each one a different resonant frequency, each one accessible if you know how to do the math and have machinery that can do the math and project in and out of dimensions, and you can move the matter world without, like in 5 minutes, go 3 billion light years. So it's the very first time that I'm, I guess, being forced in a way from this amazing discussion with a physicist who is taking seriously the other dimensional characteristics of our cosmology that could explain, number one, how there could be point-to-point travel where you could leave this matter universe, know how to do a cushion shot going into another dimension, coming back into this universe where you want to go, move 3 billion, 5 billion, 7 billion light years and do it in minutes, because dimensions are key. And then adding to that, that this was set up, sort of like what Tom Campbell, that physicist, said, that we're in an entropy reduction trainer for souls. And it has deliberately been set up in relationship to other dimensions as a teaching tool for souls. When you start looking at everything we're dealing with through that lens, it begins to make a lot of old literatures make more sense. It makes the concept of the ghoul demons on the corners of Notre Dame, the gorgeous cathedral, and it is supposed to be that they put the demons on the corners of that great magnificent church in order to ward off evil, that the demons would ward off evil. It kind of makes your mind flip around about what is positive, what is negative, what is the true nature of angel, what is the true nature of devil. Do they exchange roles in order to teach the souls that are the key to all of the evolutionary processes in this universe? So maybe that's too long an answer without going into the physicist's interview, but I promise you, sometime, hopefully before the end of this year, I'm going to synthesize this long, huge interview I've done with that physicist and start trying to report it in some coherency. And just to say, if you put yourself in my shoes, I don't want to report things that scare people. I don't want to report things that give anybody anxiety. I don't feel fear. I don't feel any anxiety. But what I do begin to understand is that when I think that the universe, and being able to report that this universe is teeming with intelligence, consciousness, that's the big story. It's like the boundaries keep going on and on. It isn't just this universe. It's other dimensions, and those other dimensions are like chess games, and the chess games are being played up to a divine field. And maybe in the end, the simple answer to everything is that the divine field that is responsible for all matter worlds, all dimensions, and the alpha and omega to infinity, that all the divine field wants is that the souls it created and sent out into all these dimensions and matter worlds that the divine field wants the souls to learn enough out of negative and positive dynamics to choose all actions and reject everything else, and that the actions that it begins to choose over anything else that taunts and seduces and rejects that ends up automatically, by will, going back to the divine field. And then maybe everything would just close down. And I live with that as my template. It gives me great peace. I think that reincarnation is the machinery of those souls. And so therefore, whatever you can do in this life to give as much as you possibly can, it will affect where you resonate to at the moment of the death of this cycle in another cycle. And if inside of you, it's not a question, it's a knowing. To go from question to knowing that you have a soul, it is strong, it can be tempted, it can make mistakes, but it can also re-evolve. And that in the end, we're all in this together. We are all moving in some amazing evolution that is incomprehensible to the human mind in the state we are in now, except for thinking in terms of evolution in and out of various containers and matter worlds and dimensions, and getting back to the divine field. I hope that gives you comfort like it does to me. So, any other question?
Yes. Ask Linda if she's heard the theory that crop circles are actually messages from future humans, and what you think about it.
Well, I'll tell you what. I've written about this. It's in my 4th book, Mysterious Lights and Crop Circles. I told about being in England in 1983. I was out in a big, beautiful crop formation, not anything that had been hoaxed. This was one of those, the early ones were all done by something beyond comprehension. And it was so beautiful and so astounding. And a man walked up to me, total stranger, and he said, I know a friend who works in the Central Intelligence Agency, and when anybody opens up with that, I know it's them, but they are deflecting from them to the friend in the CIA. And he said, it's my understanding that we have a hypothesis that these are time travelers, and that they are putting these marks on the surface of our planet in order to help them refine their motion in time forward and backward. And he said, we have Cray computers, banks of them, and we are trying to get satellite photographs around the world of every crop formation that occurs anywhere. And we're feeding them into the Cray computers because we're looking for a mathematical language from those that are traveling in time. I've never forgotten that. I didn't have enough context at the time to know what to think. But now, that was in 1993. So now we are at 2018. And the distance that we've all come in these decades, I now think back that maybe this man who approached me as a complete stranger, maybe he was telling me the truth. And maybe the crop formations in the beginning that were miraculous were being made by frequencies, by something trying to judge, refine, update. It's time travel. And then you're left with a bigger question. Why would time travelers from someplace else be using the cereal crop skin of our earth not to refine and judge and update what it was doing in time travel. How about one more question?
Absolutely. What does Linda think about Tom Campbell's MBT theory?
Well, I think you're talking about we're in an entropy reduction trainer for souls. That's the phrase I used a few minutes ago. And for those of you who have followed my Coast to Coast and Earth Files work, when I do them together, I do 3 hours live every month on Coast. Well, at Earth Files, there will be 4 reports usually related. And if you go to my search at earthfiles.com and type in Tom Campbell, then you will go to those Earth Files reports that I did last year. And I thought they were some of the most provocative that I've ever done when it comes to this question of who are we, what is this universe, what are other intelligences in this universe doing, what is the relationship of other dimensions, could we be in a holographic universe? If so, it would have to be projected from another dimension. It couldn't be projected within the matter universe. And Tom Campbell has his own hypothesis that we are in a universe that is a computer simulation and doesn't even need to be projected from another dimension. That it was created by code, is evolving in code to be entropy. Entropy is the winding down of everything. Entropy is death. Entropy is blackness versus white, dark versus light, hate versus love. Think of everything where it annihilates, goes to zero. That's entropy. We're in an entropy universe. In this particular universe, everything is winding down. So an anti-entropy, entropy reduction, means you do everything you can in your life to reduce entropy. That is to love. That is to seek the light. That is always seeking truth, telling truth, fighting lies, fighting corruption, fighting policies of denial. All of those actions reduce entropy. And as Tom Campbell says, the key to everything in this entropy universe, literally to everything, is to learn how to love from your soul. There is agape love that the Greeks said was fundamental. Agape is what a mother feels for her child, a father feels for his child, brother to brother, sister to sister, all of the combinations of love that does not involve sex. And then there is sexual love. They are both anti-entropy actions. So when you look at your own life and you think about what do you cherish, think about what you cherish. Cherish is an act of love, whether it's agape or sexual. And what you cherish, if you have intent to be positive about interacting, whether it is animals, whether it is plants, people, whatever it is that you cherish, you want to spend as much energy as you can in companionship with that. That is anti-entropy, or as Tom Campbell says, entropy reduction. And that the entropy reduction, any action, any thought that in this universe will reduce entropy, is strengthening that soul to leave this entropy universe and go perhaps to another universe in which there would never be any entropy. Try to think about that. Time would go to the future. You couldn't throw a glass and break it in that universe. I don't know how you would ever break anything. You would always be evolving to something that would be younger. And so there is one abductee who was introduced to a hologram inside of a craft by beings. They were gray beings, and they showed him a hologram, and they showed him 5 pairs of universes. And they had, he said it was like a camera that could be big enough to get outside and still have a photograph of 10 universes paired. And the gray being put one of its long, thin fingers and pointed at one of the pairs and said, "That is your universe. And none of you are aware of the universe next door to you, but that they are paired around an electromagnetic membrane. You're in this universe. It's an entropy universe. The vector of time goes to the past, and everything is winding down. And in this universe, it is the opposite. This one is a universe in which there is no entropy." And the being said to this abductee, who was a scientist, maybe that's why they talked to him in such scientific terms and showed him this, said that in your universe, you evolve in your mind and die in your body. And that at the moment of death, the soul goes into a charge transition tunnel. That was the words that were used to this scientist. Charge transition tunnel. And he said, I understood that where we would have negative electrons and positive protons, they would be changed. So that the soul goes in with the subatomic world that is changing to enter the universe that we are paired with by an electromagnetic membrane. And that in this universe, it would be an antimatter universe to this universe. They'd be completely the opposite. And then he described seeing colors he had never seen. That it was like the sky was white and the suns were black and everything was the opposite. And then he said, Linda, they showed me in that universe how everything got younger and younger and younger, everything, and was born back in this universe of ours, of entropy, where everything goes back down to death, goes through the charge change tunnel, is constantly reborn here, and that there are souls that do nothing but go in and out around these two universes. But he said, when you go to a certain state of consciousness, you will leave, think of it, it's the pattern of infinity, moving like this between universes. Then you break that and you're going to other dimensions. And that was an abductee. What he saw and from gray beings on a craft back in 1982. And he was a scientist, and I've kept in touch with him ever since. And I know that he still is working in a lab, thinks that he's got a project where he's neutralizing gravity now. And so people get touched by this phenomenon, and they get inspired in a variety of ways. And then they all end up sort of working on the same kinds of physics, if they're scientists. And from my point of view, they keep reinforcing everything that has happened to me in my life, not as a physicist working in a lab, but as a soul in a curious mind who has had the surface of the earth literally changed before my eyes in those Idaho mountains that I've talked with you all about, and was shown that every single thing is pulsing white and orchid light. So it's as if there are layers and layers and layers, and that the perceptions keep pushing us to see beyond matter, and to see beyond death, and to see beyond birth. And that, to me, is exciting. Everything about this is exciting. And if there are demon, devil energies in the astral plane next door, then the best thing you can possibly do in this universe is learn how always to sense evil and turn away immediately. And on that note, in the light, in all the positive energy, until next Wednesday, and I will be getting ready to go to Alien Con, back to California, to Pasadena, and I learned at Contact that ancient aliens, they are really expecting 20,000 people to go through the Pasadena Convention Center the weekend of the 15, 16, 17 of June, where I and the 11 guys, there's 11 guys and me, we have been the Ancient Aliens squad, so to speak, doing Ancient Aliens for 11 seasons now. And I understand there's going to be some sci-fi stars there and some people from Hollywood, and 20,000 people. Can you imagine? And you know what that says? We are now truly moving in to that new world, if you can take it, as Lieutenant Colonel Corso said. Because for these numbers of people seeking out these kind of events, from conferences to alien cons, means you, the people, you are outracing, outstretching the policies of denial by the governments and the bureaucracies. Congratulations, everybody. I love you. See you next week.